What's up everyone, this is CoyneDawg here with another GTA video. So in this video we're going to be looking at 3 more vehicles that I think everyone should own. So I did an episode of this a while back which was a very popular video. So I've decided to do another one of 3 more vehicles that I think you guys should buy if you do not own them already. So first up we've got the Jester race car. Now before I even go into the Jester race car and why I think you should buy one, I just really want to say that this car is my favourite car in the entire game. Firstly because I think it looks awesome, especially in the colour scheme that I've gone for here, but secondly it was like the first car that I bought when I started racing properly, and you know, I don't know, it was kind of the car that made me fall in love with Grand Theft Auto, to be honest, back in 18 months ago when I started playing, so that's kind of why it's got a special place with me. But the reason that I would recommend it to you guys if you haven't got one already kind of goes back to the video I mentioned last time. So in the last episode of this that I did, I mentioned that the Elegy was, it was a car that I'd recommend everyone have, and it still is, to be honest. It's a free vehicle, so you might as well get one. But I also said that it's a very difficult car to drive well and to get the speed out of that it has. Of the top car in each class, that one is probably the most difficult to drive as quick as you can, to be honest. I mean, if you look at like the RE7B and stuff like that in the Supercar class, it's very easy to drive that quickly, relatively, compared to something like the Elegy. So, because of that, this is why I'm recommending the Jester, because the Jester is Jester race car, that is, not the normal Jester, is very easy to drive quick. If I just want to go on Grand Theft Auto and do a few races, don't really want to have to concentrate too much, you can pick up the Jester race car and you can do well in a race quite easily with it. I say quite well just as I'm crashing like that, but you know what I mean. So it is a car that it does not need lots of concentration to drive on the limit. It's quite easy to get to the limit, and if you go a little bit over the limit, it's not going to throw you off into the barriers like the Elegy does. That if you're racing in top tier races, then the Elegy will always be quicker, except unless you're on a very specific circuit. But not everyone does top tier racing, and if you're in public lobbies, you will come across a hell of a lot of people using Elegy's that just don't know what they're doing with it. To be honest, if you race in any sort of semi-serious racing, you'll come across a lot of people that don't really know what they're doing with an Elegy. That they just drive one because they know that it's supposed to be the quickest car, but in terms of how you actually drive it properly, they haven't got that ability to get the top times out of it. And I said I haven't got the ability to get the top times out of an Elegy either, if I'm honest. It's not a car that I use very often at all. I much prefer the Jester. In terms of the Jester itself, so it costs 350,000, which isn't too bad really for a car of this level. Obviously the Elegy is free, but the Jester, 350,000, it's not too much. The top speed of it is reasonable. It's not, it's probably its weakest area, the top speed, but it's not like lots of miles an hour down on the top cars. It can hold its own, but if you're doing races that have got lots of really high speed races sections, then it might let you down a little bit. And its cornering ability is great. Its brakes are normally great. Obviously this is a wet race, which I don't do a lot of, so that's why I'm a bit all over the place, but I do actually end up getting back up to 6th position. So yeah, so that's my reasons for recommending the Jester to you guys, and if you haven't got one, then I thoroughly recommend you go and buy one. So the second vehicle that we've got today is a motorbike, and the reason I've gone for a motorbike next is because basically I've done a sports car, a motorbike and a supercar, because those are the 3 classes that you generally use for racing. You don't come across the others so much, they're like the main ones. I've gone for the Hikuchu Drag here as the bike that I would recommend you all buy. And now the reason I've gone for this bike is we've obviously at the top of the bike class now, you've got the Shitaro and this. And the old super bikes that we used to all use, the Batty and the Akuma and all that, in my opinion now they're kind of too far back to really compete regularly with these top bikes. You will end up, especially with the new stunt races, in a lot of motorbike races, and people will generally either be using a Hikuchu Drag or a Shitaro because they are so much better than the old Akuma and the Batty, etc. So yeah, the reason I've gone for the Hikuchu over the Shitaro mainly is the price, to be honest. The Shitaro, I think it's like 2.25 million or something like that, which is just a ridiculous amount of money for a bike. The Hakuchu drag is, I think it's 970,000 or somewhere around there, which you could say is quite a lot of money still, but for a bike with this level of performance, I think is money well spent. And if you do a lot of racing, especially in public lobbies on the stunt tracks, then you need one of these custom bikes to compete, really. So I mean, if you've got the money to burn, then obviously buy the Shitaro, but the lap time difference is so small on them that, you know, I wouldn't really bother, to be honest. The Hakuchu is probably the better to go for. The Hakuchu, in terms of what I would say about it, I mean, I have bought a Shitaro because I had the money, but I used to use the Hakuchu a lot, and the only thing that I didn't like about it was its cornering ability. For anyone that's used one before, you've probably noticed that when you need to slow down quite a bit for corners for it, because it doesn't like turning, whereas the Shitaro, you know, you don't even need to slow down for corners sometimes. But where the Hakuchu makes its time back up is in its top speed. It is quite quick. You will notice that if you're in a drag race with a Shitaro, that you'll be much quicker than it in a straight line with the Hakuchu drag. So obviously it's track specific in terms of which one is the better of the two, but I think value for money wise, the Hakuchu drag is the far better buy. I'm not really a fan of bike races myself. I try and avoid them where I can, but I know that a lot of people do them, and if you're doing the stunt races at the moment, then you're going to end up in bike races. So that's why I've got a bike to recommend to you guys, and that's why I would suggest you get the Hakuchu drag. And then finally, the supercar that I've gone for is the Nero Custom. So the reason I've gone for the Nero Custom over any of the others is, in my opinion, it's the best all-around vehicle in the supercars class. It's not, it doesn't excel at anything, to be honest, but it's very good in all situations. It's got a good top speed, it's got great cornering ability, it's four-wheel drive, so it handles well in the wet and in the tubes on stunt races and all that sort of stuff. So it really is just the best all-rounder. And in terms of the money it costs, so you know, it costs about £2 million to buy the Nero and then to upgrade it at Benny's, but I think it's money well spent. When you compare it to like the RE7B, which is like what, 2.5 million, the X80, which is like nearly 3 million, it is definitely, in my opinion, the best value for money. And you know, I used to be a big fan of the Tempesta before the Nero came out, and when the Nero came out, to be honest, I was still someone that really recommended the Tempesta. But it was only when I started using it a lot more in races that I realised that the top speed of the Tempesta, which for anyone that doesn't know is quite low, it really affects it a lot in races. It is very good through corners, but if you're on any sort of race where top speed comes into play, there is a big difference. I think it's like 5 or 6 miles an hour slower than something like the Nero Custom, which has got very similar cornering ability to a Tempesta, but has then got that extra top speed to keep it ahead on the straights. And you know, it looks really good as well, I think. For anyone that wants any ideas for paint jobs or anything, I've got a video on that as well. So yeah, so that's the supercar that I would recommend to you guys. You know, it's, as I said, it's not the best at anything. If you want something for high speed cornering, obviously the RE7B is very good, but again, the RE7B suffers from lower top speeds and that sort of thing. And obviously the other thing, for anyone that doesn't know, any sort of rear wheel drive car in stunt races that've got lots of tubes, they lose a lot of time in the tubes. So if you're doing any sort of stunt races with tubes, then don't pick an RE7B or a Tyrus or anything like that. You really want to go for a Tempesta or a Nero Custom or anything. Itali GTBs even are pretty good on stunt races. So yeah, so that's why I recommend the Nero Custom, that is. So that's it, guys. Those are my 3 recommendations for you. Thanks very much for watching. Feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. I'd like to hear your comments below on vehicles that you would recommend and why. And I'll be back in a couple of days' time with another testing video. Thanks very much.